I would love to see we're not falling into the trap. We're able to spot the trap and avoid it.
Welcome to Saints Sexuality, a podcast by FirstLight Ministries for educating the church about healing from sexual sin. Today on Saints Sexuality, we are continuing to get to know the men and women who make FirstLight possible. Joining us today is our latest counselor, Matthew Friesen. So before FirstLight, you worked in management and vocational ministry. In recent years, you've started pursuing becoming a licensed counselor. Do you view this as a change in your career or more of a continuation of your previous work?
For me, this is a big change in the career. I've worked at a lot of different places over time. Working in the church, even from the point of high school graduation, I was in a discipleship ministry program for 2 or 3 years before I came on as an assistant director of that program. And then I was on staff at a church down in Atlanta and then back here in St. Louis. And even stepping out of full-time vocational ministry, doing lay ministry, it's been the focus and what I did to provide for myself, for my family, while it's been paramount and I've felt a calling in those places to live and to grow. The focus has always been on my ministry at home, to my wife, to my kids, and growing as a father and growing as a husband and all that means, and then pouring into the church and teaching, into pastoring, into discipling, into to counseling in some respects. And so making the decision about 4 years ago now, sitting on a dock at the lake, just thinking the Lord had something else for me and asking for open doors, and walking through them, this journey through grad school and into this new profession and this new practice, has been a calling in and of itself. And so this is a big career change, a big life change for us. My family's been with me the whole way. And so moving into this is a brand new shift, in setting, maybe not in practice. I've done counseling and done discipleship work and work in the church, but this setting of being in a professional setting and the education that comes behind it and the work that goes with it is going to be brand new. And I'm so excited.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different areas of focus as for counselors, a lot of different ways that you can hone your expertise. You've decided to pursue the rather unique and challenging work of sex addiction therapy. So why did you decide to pursue this work and why did you decide to do it at FirstLight?
The more I learned about FirstLight, the more it seemed to be the right fit. The idea that I struggled with coming into even taking on this educational was, how do I integrate, how do I marry spiritual work with clinical work? And the secular field sometimes presents challenges of not getting people the whole way. It seems like we're leading them down a path, but we don't finish that journey with them. As we know, as Christians, bringing people to the understanding and healing in the fullness of Christ is the only way that they're going to know that on this side of heaven. And so being able to work in a place that is, while it's not doing it perfectly, as we struggle on this side of earth, or on this side of heaven, we are pursuant of that grace and that restoration of healing that comes from Christ, and being able to integrate the promises of the Word of God along with clinical background, along with biology, along with science, and being able to walk with clients in such a wide spectrum of issues, depending on what they're coming in with: childhood trauma, family of origin. The background can be so diverse, and yet we can still meet them in a very similar place of compassion and empathy.
Yeah. FirstLight really focuses specifically on sexuality, sex addiction, pornography, adultery, and spousal betrayal.
Yeah.
Why do you think that work is important to the church?
Yeah. So a big picture is my heart is still for the church, even though it's not vocational ministry in the church. I feel like the enemy has attacked the church through two big ways, and one is through the knowledge of God and just lies and understanding who God is. And the second biggest attack I feel like is on the family, is at the head of the household, and lying to men and women that this is how it has to be, that on this side of brokenness, on this side of Eden, that we are just subject to developmental problems. We're subject to the fall. And so it is just your destiny to live in brokenness. It's your destiny to live in sin. And while we are sinful creatures, the calling of a man to be the head of the household, to be a godly example for those around him, whether he's married or not, lends himself to such a big impact in how the church functions. If we look at the impact of sexual infidelity and abuse, pornography use, adultery, you named a lot of them, and how that impacts the family. You look at divorces, and now families either stop going to church or they go to different churches. The financial burden is huge. The church is unable to do missional work because family units aren't together. Men's ministries are tattered. Women's ministries are struggling because there's no cohesiveness in the home, and the enemy's attacked that head on to rip it apart, to dissect it, to bring in lies, to bring in that understanding that we have to live with this. There's no healing. This is just the way you are. And that lie needs to be confronted and needs to be spoken to in truth. And I feel like there's a place for that here.
One of your professional goals is to facilitate healing and growth, to foster resilience and wholeness for individuals and couples. How does your work as a counselor facilitate and foster those attributes in clients?
It's hard holding both of those in dichotomy of, I feel like I'm doing good work, but I know it's not me who's doing the work. Being that vessel to speak to the situation, to be the physical presence of compassion, of empathy, to be the listening ear, to be fully present in the room with a client, whether it's an individual or a couple, can bring congruence to their life. It can ground them. Having someone to speak into their life with truth and empathy is just notably impactful. And so when we're looking for, fostering that healing and facilitating that integration of their whole self, being an image bearer of God, being someone who's called to more, allows us to unpack the messy stuff, the brokenness, the really hard things, and understand what can be healed, what can be laid down and sacrificed, and what can be picked up and moved forward in a healthy, integrated lifestyle. And so being able to work with individuals and couples and allow myself to be present for the Lord and for them themselves to look within themselves and facilitate that and foster that healing is a wonderful opportunity. It's a real gift. And hopefully that's part of that stepping stone to restoration in both their lives, their relationship, and in their family.
You've said that you want your counseling ministry to be grounded in both compassion and also biblical principles. As it relates to sex addiction therapy, how do you think personal character and biblical orthodoxy are both needed for counseling ministry?
So that's the big wrestling part, is when you sit through the education in the formal sense, even at a wonderful Christian seminary, there's still, even today in 2024, a struggle to fully integrate theology, spirituality, psychology, and the understanding of what links them. And so when we look at biblical orthodoxy and how this truth impacts us, the hard part is, in today's society, it seems like it's very hard to say anything is 100% absolute truth. That is something that is really hard, that we say everyone has their own story, everyone has their own experience, and what's true for you is true for you, and what's true for me is true for me. And they don't necessarily cross over. And so this lie of understanding that your truth is yours and yours alone separates and isolates people. And it's what brings people to this place of looking within themselves and relying on their own strength for getting over this or getting through this. And what they find in themselves is brokenness. They find weakness. And so allowing someone else into that story who can speak truth and say it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to live in brokenness. There is restoration. There is healing possible. It may not look exactly how you think it's going to look. The journey may not take the road that you think it's going to take, but offering yourself in humility and in meekness to the work of Christ and inviting somebody like a therapist into it, a helper, you can do the work that the Lord wants to do in you, and it can help you kind of create these bumper rails, if you will, as if when we want to go off the rails, when we want to take a path that we think is best, there's this opportunity for a Christian counselor, for someone who's guided in the clinical work, to say, hey, here's where we're going to try. This is the path that we're going to take. These are the steps that we're going to take. And I want to hear your experience as we take those steps. And if we need to diverge, if we need to move from one way to the other, we can. But this is the path that's worked for people in the past. This is the path that's laid out for Christians. And I really want to see you walk this path. And I'm here for you as it gets hard, is really important.
If you could dream big for your hopes for counseling ministry and the church, what impact are you hoping sex addiction therapy will have on the church?
That's a great question. Looking at FirstLight being planted in St. Louis, it seems like it has this opportunity to be almost like this root system that goes through the ground, and it may not be all encompassing like an umbrella, but the idea that it can reach into churches, that it can reach into leaders in St. Louis, pastoral leadership, school leadership, counseling, impact programs, and have an understanding of how we can attune to and touch sexual brokenness would impact society as a whole. To understand culture, to understand the church, to understand leadership, and move from hopefully this idea of kind of playing triage and playing catch up with the brokenness, is that somewhere down the road, as this healing takes place and we're fostering this healthy relationship with each other and this resilience in the world that we live in and relationship with Christ, is that we can actually move into almost preventative care. As the healthcare, we've seen this with infectious diseases, is that we're no longer treating, we're doing preventative care. Things that were fatal, 100 years ago now are small and easily taken care of because we can spot it so early on. And I would love to see families restored, churches, remove this to be such a large hurdle, and to move into this preventative care, that we're not falling into the trap. We're able to spot the trap and avoid it.
Yeah, I can't think of a single pastor out there who doesn't long for a world where the church is able to be proactive rather than reactive.
The impact would be ridiculous. It'd be unknown to us what that would even look like. Yeah.
So, ending our interview, we have our series of lightning round questions. Yeah. All the staff members are asking or getting asked these questions because they are expertly tuned to give us a complete look of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
So, starting us off, coffee or tea?
I'm a tea guy. I went to a mission trip in Ireland and I got hooked on tea, and I'd take tea over coffee most days.
Call or text?
It depends on who it's with. Close friends, I want to call. If I don't know you, we'll start with text and work our way up.
What was the last book you picked up?
A book by Dr. McMinn on psychology, theology, and spirituality and professional counseling. I'm still going through it, and I'll probably go through it again when I'm done.
What's a favorite Bible verse about healing?
It's probably Paul's final address in 2 Corinthians, where he says, finally, dear brothers, aim for restoration. And this call to his disciples and his churches to live accordingly and to the word and live in peace and aim for restoration. And then he makes the declaration that he goes, then the God of peace will come and live with you.
Lastly, what little thing in life gives you joy?
My wife and kids. They are at a wonderful age. My kids bring a lot of joy, a lot of frustration, but a lot of joy in their imagination and their silliness, and the way I get to engage with them right now is just as hard as it is some days. It's the delight of my world, and being able to do that along with my wife is memories and treasure that I can't trade for anything.
Thank you for coming on the program.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.